Great. Welcome. We have lots of people interested today in the session, so that's wonderful. Thank you. Oh, San Fran. Oh, Xoxels. Woohoo. Another person from Canada. Fantastic. Yeah, please feel free to add in. Wonderful. So we don't want to be too behind time. We have so many people registered and coming in now. We do just have a special announcement. Many of you know Shamoli very well, and I just wanted to say it's her birthday on Saturday. So if everyone could just wish her a very happy birthday. She's headed off to a little well-deserved vacation after this session. So if we all just wanted to wish her a very happy, if you want to come off mute and just wish her a happy birthday.
Thanks, Leanne. Not me.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
You're very much loved, Jamoli. That's great. And hi again, everyone. I'm Leanne, for all of you just coming in now. I'm an environmental scientist, and I currently work at the Climate Pi and AI Climate Solution Recommender, and with Boro, an exciting circular economy startup. So I'd love to talk to more of you later about both of those. If you are interested, feel free to add in your LinkedIn, and everyone can look at connecting. Oh, another person from Toronto. Fantastic. Feel free to add into the chat. I was just mentioning to Michael and Ethan, who came in early, to put in where you're coming from. And if you're a Terra fellow now or a graduate, we'd love to know where the community is coming from. I'm happy to facilitate today as your Terra ambassador, and I look forward to a lively session. Look how many people we have registered. That's fantastic. So much interest here. Please fill in any questions you may have. You guys know the drill in the Q&A, and we'll be sure to get to as many of those as possible. We're a couple minutes now after the hour, so we should look at getting started, and I'll keep admitting people as they do come in. If we are recording, if that's okay, if you can just press, yes, there's a couple of you still need to press that. That's great. So let's get started. Here we go, a couple more added in. Perfect. Let's extend a warm welcome and a thank you to Evan Abel. He's here today to share his career and his experiences with our eager Terra community. Evan is a consumer-focused innovator with over 15 years of experience building novel products, services, and business models. He led service design and sustainability at The Rounds, a modern-day milkman model for zero waste delivery of household essentials. Previously, Evan led circular economy initiatives at Walmart, including reuse and beyond the bag. And Evan co-founded Frank, a peer-to-peer money lending platform in behavioral economics principles. He also founded Friends of Rockaway, a disaster relief nonprofit. And additionally, in all his spare time, he's also a professor at the University of New York, NYU, in product design and development. It's the Tandon School of Engineering. So thank you so much, Evan, for coming. And we can't wait to hear more from you about your sustainability projects and the impact that you're having on climate. So thanks so much for joining.
Great. Thank you so much, Leanne. Really appreciate it. Very happy to be here with the community and happy to share my story. I will try to run through what I've prepared as quickly as I can and save time for maybe more focused conversation and Q&A. So it's, I'll probably just be moving quickly. There's a number of slides, but we'll try to keep that moving. Also, if anybody wants to interrupt, feel free to. You can save it for after, but I'm also okay with interrupting me. So I'll share my screen and we can get started.
Wonderful. I've set you able to share here. Let's see if this works.
Yeah, I don't think I can right now.
Is it working? All participants, yeah.
It is not. I wonder.
Not working. Yeah, one person to share at a time. Let's try that. Participants. Oh, that's no fun. Share the chat preview. Yeah, it says you can share here. All participants. We'll try another. Just do all here again. Is that working?
Let me try. If not, I may have to send you my deck. I'm on an older computer, maybe.
And sharing options. No, it's saying it should work. No. It's set to.
Steph and I've also just made you co-host, so hopefully that should give you the rights to share.
Oh, that's probably, see, Shamoli's always got the answer. Is it working now, Shamoli?
I hope so.
I know, eh? Gotta love Zoom.
Let me try. Let's see this.
All participants, it says
Okay,
here.
here. I think it's on me.
Oh, we got so many people in from Dingoes. Hello, everyone from the Dingoes cohort.
I think
Is it working then? Yeah?
it should be one minute. I'm gonna have to quit and reopen, so I'll be right back. Sorry about that.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
We can all start a little conversation. What is everyone hoping to get from this today? Feel free to come off mute and join the conversation.
I'm
Anyone?
looking forward to learning more about how he's actually influencing consumer behavior in the circular economy, because that's one of the biggest challenges. So I'd love to
Right.
learn more on techniques for influencing consumer behavior.
The actual, yes, good point. Because you can actually have an initiative working at Walmart, like where he worked, but is there uptake? Good question. Yeah, we'll have to get to that for sure. Anybody else interested in finding out more?
I'd like to learn about overcoming some of the obstacles in the infrastructure that we have. For example, not being able to resell, to get rid of things. We have a problem here with people just putting crap out on the street when they don't want it anymore.
Oh,
So
right.
that kind of thing is an issue.
It is very much so. Let's hope we hear some more solutions. I think we've got sharing happening. Can everyone see this? Thumbs up. All right.
All right, great.
Evan, you did it. Here we go.
I did it. Problem solver. Great. Well, thanks again for having me. We'll jump right in and work through it. So, actually, one second. Yeah, so we're just going to run through my career history, which you'll see is not the straightest path towards climate or sustainability, which hopefully will be inspiring to all of you who are not yet there. Then we'll just do a quick kind of look back on it, how I actually got into it, and then, we'll talk about tips and tricks to getting into it. I'll just first say that I don't think getting into sustainability is that different from getting into anything that is new and scary and desirable. So I think it can be used really in any form. So quickly about me, I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I got my bachelor's of engineering in mechanical engineering in Canada, actually, in Montreal, for those of you from the north. I then got my MBA with a focus in startups and behavioral economics. And so again, you can see there's no formal education in climate or sustainability. And then just a bit about me. I'm into the outdoors and some of these kinds of fun things, just so you can get a sense of who I am. So I started my career, I would say, or my career inspiration at an art festival in 2006, where I realized, I was brought to my attention that even being a mechanical engineer didn't mean I needed to do boring things, no offense to anyone out there, such as, heating and ventilation, like air conditioning lines, that there was also a world of creativity and problem solving in dimensions that I didn't really think about. This wasn't taught in school, but I created this kind of defunct pirate ship with a group of other people. And, it was a lot of engineers, a lot of calculating and welding and figuring things out. So that was kind of the first eye-opening moment of my career. I then used that to get a job with OXO, which is a kitchen gadget company. And I got to work on all sorts of really fun products and got my hands really dirty in manufacturing. So I was going back and forth to manufacturing factories and working with designers and getting to work on all of this, fun stuff. But at the same time, I was very aware at the time, this is back in 2007, that I was making plastic things mostly in China, right? And it weighed heavily on me. But there was another side, which is that these things were ergonomic, they were high quality, they could last a long time. But it kind of always bothered me, right? These weren't single use, but we certainly didn't have much appetite for, materials exploration. We stopped using PVC. It was the time when BPA and polycarbonate came out. People were moving away from that, but we were just kind of following the trends. It wasn't really spearheading new things there. So I forget how many images there are on the slide. So happens sporadically. At the same time, though, I became really interested in composting, and didn't know if this would ever be a career or a hobby. But at the time, New York was sponsoring this kind of competitive program. It was hard to get into. A master composter program is a 3-month course at the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens, where you really learned everything about composting. And as part of that, your buy-in was you had to do projects that would further composting in New York City. And so on the bottom left, I made a compost bench in a shared yard with my apartment building, and then worked in community gardens on the right to build these kind of 3-bin systems for communities to use. And so again, I bring this up because it was just interesting. It's something I learned about. I didn't know how it would connect, but I now see that it was part of my kind of green story. And there's other connections to modern composting companies now, like Pella, the Lomi, and the Mill, companies that I have close connections with, and kind of always think back to my start in the composting world. Unfortunately, my childhood neighborhood was impacted by a hurricane back in 2012, and I, by chance, started a nonprofit with a childhood friend. And the reason I think this is an important kind of lesson is within weeks, I became a subject matter expert on mold remediation, on rebuilding, on how to navigate various funding, insurance, FEMA in the States. Like, it was really wild and changing every day. And out of necessity, I decided that I was going to know everything there was to know about this and partner with other organizations, other groups, and try to help my community. And so I didn't want to stay in that field, and I was fortunate. I went down to New Orleans and met with a group that came up after Katrina. They were 10 years older than us, and they had a really well-oiled machine. And so we gave them the keys and told them to keep doing the good work. But this wasn't my passion. It's just something I felt a need to do. But I think the speed in which you can become a subject matter expert on something it's really amazing. And it's anyone. I'm certainly not a special person. I think it's just when there's a need, you rise to it. I then actually decided to move to Israel for kind of just personal reasons, and found this job at an amazing company that was making a stroller that folds into a car seat. So it's one piece. You can now see them in many places in the world. It still has these highlighted yellow back wheels. So if you see it, know that I worked on it. It was a really cool project. Then I came back to the States and worked on this infant mattress that's made from extruded plastic that helps prevent SIDS, which is sudden infant death syndrome. So it's breathable, it's easy to clean. So that's what we were trying to solve there. And then, as was mentioned earlier, I started a company with a friend in peer-to-peer money lending. And so this is rooted in behavioral economics, which again, I think is just really important to realize that any product you come up with, any service you come up with, it's ultimately about how people respond to it, how adaptable it is. It's the psychology of it. And so again, my work in circular economy, I think back to this stuff constantly, all the time, because you can put out reusable bags all day long, but how do you actually make that behavior change? And when you think of all the different players, right, companies, government, this is the stuff that becomes really tricky to navigate. So it's not the visionary piece, it's the tactical execution. And a lot of that is, psychology. And so this was kind of my foray into that. I then went back into hardware and worked on this really delicious frozen yogurt machine for your house, like a Keurig of froyo. So you just put whatever milk you wanted into a freeze-dried bowl, and put it in the machine and used it. We debated a lot back and forth on, should it be a reusable bowl? Should it be a kind of single-use bowl? And ultimately, the stage we were in, they were single-use. And again, we knew the stories of the Keurig founder being really disgruntled with the amount of waste that Keurig was producing. But again, when you think about cold chain, right, like people that are buying frozen yogurt that gets made and then shipped in freezing trucks and stored. And so we were absolving everything from that from a supply chain standpoint. Again, not arguing that this is good for the world, but it's kind of incremental steps, right? Like, is it maybe better than what was existing before? From there, we had trouble raising a Series B, but we, in a very weird twist of events, ended up getting acquired as what's called an acqui-hire. So they hired our team, but they left the yogurt machine, by Walmart. And so that's how I got into Walmart. So as a, kind of engineering business hippie from Brooklyn, Walmart was not really on my list of companies to apply to, but I found myself there. And we ended up in this really cool incubator arm called Store Number 8, where they helped think of, the future visionary world, and then funding these projects and supporting them and trying to blend them into their world. And so we worked on something called InHome Delivery, which actually enables a delivery person to go into your house and put your groceries into your fridge and freezer, whether you were home or not. And so we did that with a smart lock or smart garage door opener, a live streaming camera. And so, as maybe crazy as this seems, this is actually live in over 1,000 stores right now. So it was a very successful program. We were a 10-person team. It grew into a very large business unit and is now fully integrated into Walmart. Within about 2 years of building out that project, I became a little, bored, I would say. I was looking for other things. It was COVID. And I happened to stumble upon the fact that Walmart, like right beneath my nose, had all these really ambitious sustainability goals. And it was nothing related to what I was doing, but I figured, like, I'm already here, right? Like, how do I tap into this? And so I'll talk more specifically about how I did that, but you'll see this on the bottom of this slide. There's this one project that really kind of caught my attention. And again, we'll dig into that. Anyways, I worked on the sustainability part for a couple of years. And then, again, we'll talk about how I landed at the Rounds, but then joined the Rounds, which is a zero waste grocery refill and delivery service. And so you can see, right, they're still selling things like LaCroix, which we can argue is not zero waste. But by and large, the idea was make a business that's attractive to a majority of people, and then help nudge them towards being more sustainable. So again, we can talk more about this in the Q&A, but there's companies that are hardcore dire, like, we're zero waste, we won't have any packaging, and that's great, but it actually only appeals to a very small percent of the population, at least today, and at least in the States, right? I don't want to speak for the whole world. But the question of how you can make impact might be, and this is the Rounds kind of ethos, is make something that is more sustainable than the alternative. It's not perfectly sustainable, but have it be, like, massively appealing to the market. And so again, we can talk more about that. And essentially just a modern day milkman for those of you from other countries, Latin America, I know, right? Like beer bottles and Coke, they often go right back to those factories. They get cleaned and scanned and refilled directly. The States, we've largely abandoned that, but we used to have, a milkman that would literally pick up your old milk container, clean it, and reuse it. So nothing too new there. And then I actually left the Rounds a few months ago. And I'm just doing some consulting now. So I've been working with Target on a reusable bag project, specifically in New Jersey. There's very strict laws there. And so there's a lot of my work at Walmart and a lot of how I think about things. I'll drop one quote now that I think about a lot, which is, the future is here. It's just not fully democratized. So it's not everywhere. Like, so there's things you can think about, like, that are happening in Europe that are not yet happening in the States. There's things happening in New Jersey and Maine and Oregon that are not happening in Arkansas. And when you start to take that perspective, you can really think about great ways to make improvements on things, and also to understand why things can and can't work in certain places at certain stages. So I think a lot about businesses and sequencing. And so we have these opportunities to test things in certain places and learn from them in order to help scale them. So that's my entire life story. Sorry if it's long-winded. Just quickly looking through these companies and thinking about how you can slice them up. So I do this pretty regularly, I would say once a year at least. I look back and think about my career, my trajectory, what I'm trying to do. And I try to think about it in different ways. And so one is, how would you group your different jobs together? For me, they've kind of fallen into these two buckets of like physical product and then like other. And the other has been more interesting and exciting to me as of recent, but I still have this like diehard roots in physical product. Another way to do it, and again, maybe business school corrupted my mind, but I love 2x2 matrices. And I think what's most interesting with this is actually thinking about what would your axes be? And so for me, impact is a huge piece. And you can think about it in different ways, right? Like the size of the impact or kind of how meaningful it is. And so when I was at Walmart, they were really big, but they weren't that sustainable. And so that's what I was trying to work on there. Like, how do I make Walmart more sustainable? Right? And so that's why I shifted from doing the in-home delivery, which is just making them bigger, to working on these climate projects that was making them more sustainable. On the converse, the rounds was starting like fairly sustainable, fairly meaningful, but I don't think they had a path and a strategy towards growth. And so I was working on a little bit more of like, how do we become a successful company? Because if the model holds, it'll have big impact, right? So just think about how these things get placed. When we look at it on a time sequencing, just again, to be honest, I really only started my actual climate career in 2020. And so, we can drag my composting hobby from way back before, but it's really only been a modern kind of invention. And I think there's a few reasons for that. Not necessarily my interest, but opportunities, right? Like now we're in a world, which we'll talk about, which like, this is what's happening. This is what's going on. And so there's more and more opportunities. And so even though I didn't start at Walmart on the green space, I used that to transition my career within there. And now that I flipped at Walmart, it's now kind of set the stage for my future trajectory. So again, I know there's a lot of fortunate pieces there that you might be saying this is not helpful to me, but I think there's a thread which we'll pull on. So again, going back to it, I think, the time is now. Like this is a great time. There's way more climate jobs than people that have expertise, which also means it's actually relatively easy to become a subject matter expert in something climate, right? Like pick your niche and just do it, read about it, study it, meet with the companies that are doing it, and you can level up really quickly. Nobody's been doing this for that long, right? Like I now, from 2 years ago already, go and speak on panels as a subject matter expert on something I've only been doing for 3 years, right? This is like a new world. This is not like I've been in banking for 25 years, and that's what makes me a subject matter expert. So it's new, and nobody knows yet how to do this. There's not a right way to do it. So there's plenty of opportunity. And so one other nugget I would say is for all the like anger you feel about global warming and climate change and everything else that you feel in your heart, just use that energy to know that for every problem it's an opportunity, right? Like it's great if you're upset that there's a company that's using single-use plastic, like great, be angry, and then think about how you can help change that. Like there's an opportunity. You're not the only one that's upset about that. And think about where it's already changed and why was it able to change in one place and not another, or why one company and not another. So I think that's kind of the piece here. I'll run through these really quickly. You're probably all very familiar, but just like we have everything the wind is at our back right now, right? This started in 2015, SDG, read up, learn, it's great. People are throwing money at this, right? This was a huge thing, this underlined quote I think about every day. And so again, like computer science, I don't need to tell you, right? We're on Zoom right now. I couldn't share my screen. I had to close it out and restart it, right? Like we all know everything about tech. When you have people like John Doerr saying this and throwing over $1 billion to create education about it, like something is shifting. And so like it's great. It's very exciting. Again, this is maybe a bit New York bias, but we're starting our own campus on Governor's Island, which is an awesome place. It's a conglomeration of various universities, but just very exciting, lots of opportunity. We also just had this really aggressive, progressive Local Law 97 pass. It's been there's been bylaw amendments and things have been getting watered down, but by and large, I think it's probably the strongest in North America and will literally change the face of New York City. It's really exciting. It's basically that large buildings need to comply with energy ratings and regulations. And so they're redoing facades, they're changing their HVAC systems. And it's, 70% of our city emissions come from building energy use. So this will have a huge impact. And there's already the money behind it, right? Like this is a pull problem. The law has been set, the fines are in place. And so now you just have to comply. Again, don't need to go through this in detail, but from Coke to Ford, if you Google any company and the word sustainability, right? Apple, Google, H&M, P&G, any company in the word sustainability, there will be reporting now, there will be a path, there will be commitments. This is new. This is brand new, guys. Like 10 years ago, this was not the case. There's a handful of companies. And so there's people working on this, right? There's people thinking about it and working on it. We all know that maybe most of these companies at this point are not going to meet the standards they set. The world has changed. We've gone through a recession. There's wars. There's a lot going on. But it doesn't matter. The intention has been set, and this is our work to do. And so it's exciting, right? Like all these companies have, right? This is Walmart and Amazon. And so even the big companies that we love to hate are doing amazing things. And they're actually kind of setting the path forward, right? Like I remember just at Walmart, when Walmart says we're going to do, zero emissions from vehicles by 2040, it's just a call to action to go start an EV company. It's literally Walmart saying there's not going to be enough EVs in the world to meet our demands. For us to meet our commitments, world, go make these things that we need to buy. And so again, just looking at these trends is like hugely powerful and very motivating. So now just to jump into my specific journey, I read about this Beyond the Bag project just in my own reading, right? As a curious human who is interested in helping the world. And I wrote this very exciting email in July 2020. Again, just to think about how recent that was, right? It's 3 years ago. I wrote an email to friends and it says, right, this is part saying like, as you know, I work at Walmart. These are friends that wouldn't care that I work at Walmart. But I felt inspired. I actually felt proud that Walmart was sponsoring this, right? It's a significant financial check. There's a lot of time and energy from their resources. And they were kind of throwing their weight behind and saying, yeah, like we don't want to be dealing with plastic bags. Like we think it's a problem. I can get into it more, but the Walmart challenge is really interesting because it's a global organization, but just in the States, right, dealing with that type of problem in Maine and New Hampshire is really different than dealing with it in Arkansas. And so like, how do you have a strategy and how do you deal with, lobbying and regulation? And it was really interesting, but here was just me showing interest. Unfortunately, this group never really got it together and nothing happened from it here. But the reason I'll use this as my thread is I, months later, read this book, which I would recommend. There's other books like it, but again, nothing to do with climate. But for me, I was trying to figure out how do I find my right balance? And some of the things it pokes at you is like, what's important to you? And so again, for me, going back to my 2x2 matrix, like impact was really important to me. And I knew that. And I was willing to give up, compensation. I was willing to give up certain other things if I knew that I could help, move the world in the right direction. And so then I started putting pieces together, right? Like I'm at Walmart. I know Walmart's doing these green things. Like, how do I put this together? And so I reached out to someone, I cold emailed someone and they didn't really get back to me. And so I looked in Walmart's organizational chart and I found that person's manager. And I literally reached out to them on LinkedIn, right? Like not even from I couldn't even find their like Walmart email address, even though we worked at the same company. And I just wrote this really basic, simple message and saying, can I get 15 minutes with you? Right? Like I have nothing to lose, everything to gain. This is a senior director on the sustainability team. And we had our 15-minute call. And within those 15 minutes, he said, like, I just shared my enthusiasm. I had like nothing prepared. I was just yelling at him that I was excited. And within those 15 minutes, he said, Evan, I'm going to set up a call with you and me and my manager, who's the SVP, basically like the head, number 2, but really running things for sustainability at Walmart. And so I'm freaking out. I now have this call with this, really powerful person. And I'm just thinking, like, this is an interview. I have like everything to gain and nothing to lose. And I have no experience in sustainability, in climate at this point. And I'm meeting with the head of Walmart, and I just got to make a splash. I don't know, like this is my chance. And I spent, I don't know how long it was, probably 2 weeks I had, and I just spent all of my time, like literally, like I stopped working and I was just doing this full time, creating a deck. And I'm not going to share the whole thing, but I'm just sharing snippets of you. But I pretended and made myself into a subject matter expert in sustainability within these 2 weeks, right? I had a lot of ideas brewing, but I put it all together. And I just did research on what other companies were doing, right? Walmart's not the fastest. So there's a lot out there already. And I took these pieces and I got my graphic design and I, kind of created layouts for what Walmart website could look like, what the cart checkout could look like. You guys should batch orders, do no rush shipping, carbon offsets. You should not, right? Like, who am I to be speaking to the SVP of sustainability at Walmart about these things? But I just kept throwing it at her, like what you should do, why you should do it. I'm going into research about your customer base, like totally out of my realm of expertise here. When you should do it, these other projects that were happening at Walmart, which I think I can share now because it's years ago, right? But just like thinking through all of the details. And I met with other people on other teams to figure out what was blocking these projects from happening, what time you could do it. Like I went into it as if I already had this job and this was my first project, was like to propose these next things. And I met with her and she was like, this is great. She's like, I'm going to invite you to a monthly recurring meeting with the head of Walmart Plus, which for those of you that don't know, it's kind of like an Amazon Prime. It's a membership program. And so they had these monthly recurring meetings about how sustainability and Walmart Plus could align and help nudge everyone forward. And so all of a sudden I'm in these monthly meetings with the 2 of them and they're like number 2s, right? There's like a 5-person meeting. And there's this random guy from the InHome Delivery team who's showing up and like yelling and coming with all these slides and all this research, and he keeps meeting with all these other teams and whatever it is. And so, that was kind of my story at Walmart. And again, just to be, totally honest here, it was going really well. I think the only reason I left was to actually formally join the sustainability team. Would have really required a move to Arkansas, which for personal reasons I wasn't willing to do. And so, I'm still kind of torn about it. It would have been a great opportunity and I would have made a lot of impact, but, for other personal reasons, decided to stay in New York. So that's kind of how I was able to like switch and hop over the fence. And then from there, once you're able to like switch, and again, it's a little bit of it. I don't want to say it's like fake it till you make it. It's just like become that person. Like if you're curious and you want to be an expert in the thing, just go become an expert. You have infinite resources to talk to people, to businesses, to read. It's just like, it's an incredible amount of information out there. And if you're hungry, it's just available to you. So I got to work on these, really great projects. For those of you that know the company Loop, InHome and Loop, which was my dream from the beginning. When we first got acquired by Walmart, I was like, I want to do this. If we're going into people's homes, I want to be like refilling their containers. I want no more packaging. And so, right, like bringing the bulk store to your home type of thing, right? I don't even want to clean it. I just want to like refill it. So anyway, it's not quite that. Maybe one day, this is my vision. But got to work on all these really great projects with really amazing people. And the sustainability team at Walmart were like the best people. It was very inspiring. And so then from there, and this was not looking for a job exactly, I was curious, but I was trying to figure out how to incentivize the returning of packaging, right? So there's, QR codes, RFID, there's penalties, there's rewards. And again, we can talk more about this, But I literally just sent on LinkedIn this message, like they had just raised money. I said, congrats, do you have 30 minutes to talk? And again, the underlined sentence, I believe at 1:04 in the morning, we're both writing like crazy people. Pretty sure he's just like offering me a job, right? Like right off the bat, like looks at my profile and within responding in the same minute is like offering me a job. And so again, right, that was November 18th, December 7th, asks me to take a role, leading service design. So, right, like that was it. That was my career now. I'm a packaging guy, I'm a design guy, I'm doing service design, which I literally had to buy books to understand what it was formally. I realized it is what I've been doing, but I didn't know what it was called. And so that's been my transition, right? And then with Target, again, just literally colleagues that I've worked with in the past were like, hey, we need your help on this project. Can you just come help us? And so just consulting with them. So that's, that's my story. I know we've only got 20 minutes left. I would just say, like, you can become a subject matter expert, pick what's exciting to you and go do it. There's a ton to read. There's a ton of people that are willing to talk to you. People love talking about themselves. Here I am standing in front of you for 30 minutes. And you just have to, find those people. The biggest thing I say is just start where you are. Like, this is, I think, the one thing I gained from my design practice, right? And like, I've made many products. If you saw the first prototypes of any of my products, they are embarrassing and they're supposed to be embarrassing. And it's the same here, right? Like, even what I presented to Walmart, to Jane, to the SVP of sustainability, I'm not particularly proud of, but I had 2 weeks to put something together, and and that's what it was. And like, I'm proud of what I put together, but it's not the best. I wasn't an expert, but I was really curious. I was, upset that Walmart was slower than other companies. I'm still upset that the US is slower than other countries, right? Even within Walmart Canada, Walmart Chile, Walmart Mexico, those are way more sustainable operations. But there's reasons for that. And I think it's not anger, it's like curiosity and understanding it. And how do you leverage that and come up with your own hypothesis of, what can work? Just to show you, I continue to be curious. These pictures on the left and the top are these massive compost facilities in New York that I visited in the last month. Like, I don't know why I keep going back to see what's going on in the compost world. And then at the rounds, I went off and started composting in our office, right? It wasn't something, it's a sustainability company, but people are busy with their lives and they're busy with work. And so, I reached out to a friend. This container on the left worked at Poplar, which is a compost bin. This is a Pella Lomi compost on the right. That's one of our reusable jars in the front with the output. It's actually not exactly compost. It's like a dehydrated food waste product. But really just teaching people in the office and being curious about it. And who knows, right? Like, maybe that becomes a product. The rounds did start a compost pickup service. Like, I started a compost pickup service with our service, right? So it's like, we're delivering food. Well, we'll take back your compost if you don't have access to it. So again, right, just being curious and being involved. The other thing, again, in terms of like starting where you are, for those of you who know this, it works both ways. The idea is simply, if you don't know a lot about something, like let's say you're starting in climate, and you might think you know a lot because you don't know how much there is, right? And so like Einstein's quote, I think, kind of summarizes it well. And the same is true at the end. So if you're reading every day and you're like, I know stuff about circular economy, but I don't know that much. There's so much other stuff happening. You start to belittle how much you actually know, right? Like, you're forgetting that you know more than 90% of people, right? If you're just here and you're curious and you're listening and you're reading, you probably know more than most people, even at these big companies. And so you have a huge value add. And so to just think about, like, subject matter expertise is all relative, right? And so you make yourself as valuable as you can, and that's kind of it. So that's it. I know we've got 20 minutes for questions. Happy to hear from you guys.
Wow, Evan, that was amazing. That was amazing. You're so entrepreneurial, and someone put it in the chat, and it's so true. You're very brave. You just went with it, which is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all the individual steps. They have a tour of I just saw like of our water treatment facility here in Toronto, and I think I'm going to be going on that tour.
Yeah.
Go
I
to
went to
Composter.
one of
I think I'm
those.
going to go on that tour.
I went to one of those in New York too. It's fascinating. And
Yeah,
then you
I
realize,
can't wait to go now.
yeah, the biggest thing
Thank
from
you.
my takeaway there was
Yeah.
flushable wipes are not flushable. They're
It's
really
not
bad.
flushable.
So if
Dental
there's one
floss.
other thing you take away with you, don't use flushable wipes.
Very true. And I'm not sure if anyone else has some questions or comments. I mean, there's a million comments in the comment section, just how blown away so many are. But one person did ask, what has the change at the rounds to make their business model work? What had to change there when you worked at the round?
So I'm not sure. I mean, change, I'm not sure what the time scale is, but their model is essentially, the idea was create, a service and offer products that appeal to a mass of people.
Right.
And so the idea that people want to buy LaCroix, right? Like that is, people love it.
Yes.
Right? And so you can either not sell it because it's not zero waste, right? It's in an aluminum can. Or you can support that and say, we'll sell it because you want it. You're going to buy it somewhere anyway. We don't really have a way to do a zero waste LaCroix yet, right? Maybe that's a future vision. But for now, for where the company stands, we will sell LaCroix. We'll use reusable can holders. We'll take your cans back if you want to recycle it through us, right? So like we'll support everything around it, but we're not going to be so hardcore that we shoot ourselves in the foot and we can never grow to get the economies of scale that we need to actually have that huge impact. So I think that's the mentality that's different from some of the other, right? I think zero waste, it's people feel like it's very binary. And I really see everything in the business and startup world as sequencing, right? Like nobody starts with their finished product. Again, you should be embarrassed. So if you're a zero waste company and you're not fully zero waste, great, like be embarrassed, but like be a company and then work on that, right? The more that embarrassment sits, like is the further you'll get.
Very true. Very true. And Danielle had her hand up first, actually. So go ahead, Danielle.
Hi, thank you for your talk. So I'm currently an industrial design student at Virginia Tech. And so I think throughout my curriculum, we've been taught to kind of advocate for the user. And as a designer, I also want to be able to advocate for the planet. But my question is, how do you kind of have that balance between, like, I guess, advocating for the user and the planet while also kind of dealing with like business needs as well? Because I think I'm graduating in the spring. And one of my worries about entering the workplace is kind of finding that balance between like going with business needs as well as kind of advocating for the planet as well and sustainability.
Yeah, it's really tricky. I'm going to pull up, there's a slide that I didn't share that I had, which I'll just pull up for a second, right? So like historically, I've thought of this as like a three-legged stool. There's actually a newer slide, which is a four-legged stool, which I'll leave out for simplicity. But you're right. It's a really tricky balance, right? And so the planet isn't here. I mean, it's sitting on top of the stool, but I think it's hard. I don't know how to say this the right way. I think you have to sneak in your advocating for the planet into the other things because the planet's not making decisions, right? So like as a designer, you are advocating for the consumer because they're the ones making decisions. You're advocating for business because they're the ones paying your check and like making the things happening. And the government's also, I think, a really important piece here. And like, again, I don't want to kind of talk to it too much, but you can see some examples here about EPR and bottle bills. But I think ultimately as a designer, you're still, I do think you're advocating for the consumer. I think it's from your heart of hearts. Like, how do you bring about your desire to advocate for the planet into how you advocate for the consumer? So I don't think, they're not like they're in attention, but it's more like you embed it inside is I guess how I would say it. And so, yeah, I think in the same way that you're going to be drawn towards certain, fonts and colors and design styles, it's like, oh, well, I wouldn't do this. This is gonna like destroy the world. Like I'm gonna steer towards something else. But it is really tricky. And again, like there's no answers here, right? Like you're gonna be the one that invents that situation and teaches everyone else about it. Like no one has it figured out, and that's why the planet has kind of fallen off. But I do think now we're on the shift back, and so it's like maybe looking for these other trends to see how companies have done it well. Like Patagonia comes up in my mind all the time because they broke everything about everything we know, right? From their marketing, their sourcing, they were just like, oh, we're not doing it that way, and they really defined how they do it by themselves. And so I think finding those nuggets can be really inspiring and helpful.
Thank you.
Sure.
Wonderful, Danielle. Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you also, because there's no other questions in the Q&A. Does anybody else have another question? There was one there. Not now, no. But what about the psychology, Evan? Like, how do you convince people and get it to catch on and be viral? You know, how are you incorporating media, social media, to get people to buy into it? Any initiative that you've done or future ones you want to do?
Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, at the high level challenge is like changing consumer behavior is hard. And you look at the companies who've tried to do it, who've done it. And again, like that company, Frank, that we founded, you know, we failed, right? We had a system that all the research showed was better. There's a ton of examples of ways that it worked in different places. And it's not a foreign concept. People lend money to each other all the time. But to change how people do things, and just as an example from there, not to deviate, but like, you know, I went to a firehouse in New York. I knocked on their door. They let me in. I went in with my computer. They were sitting around the table. I showed them the deck and said, hey, you guys can support each other and lend each other money. And like, oh yeah, we already do that. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, yeah, we've got an envelope in the corner full of cash that anyone can take whenever they want, if they need it. And then we just, you know, replenish it. And so it's like, so you have a system, here's a better system. It's like digital, it's safe, whatever, and you can repay it, you know, but it was really hard to change their mentality. So with climate, I think it's the same thing, right? Ultimately, and I say this, I'm in Vermont right now, like literally looking out at a flock of sheep. And so, right, sheep, there's a thing about just finding the easiest thing to do. And unfortunately, most humans will just do that. And so what is that? It's price, it's convenience, it's time, right? And so to make sustainability work, you need to compete on those things. If you're going to charge more, you've restricted 90% of your market. 10% might still buy it because it's, you know, better, but you're not going to get your average person. If it's less convenient, you need to bring bags back, you need to wash your bags, you need to bring your container back to the store. It's a hard sell because people have another way to do it. And then time, right? Again, like I put that with convenience, but those are kind of the three places that I think we need to compete on. In terms of, you know, marketing, social media, there's definitely, you know, herd effects and behavioral econ for those of you familiar with the space or, you know, gamification. The earliest days of that, there's a company called O-Power that was trying to, you know, reduce peak electricity use. And they would send you a letter in the mail. They tried different things. It was fascinating. But, you know, one of their more productive methods was essentially being like, you're using more electricity than 80% of your neighbors. And that had an impact. People would start to like use less when they got that type of messaging. So making comparisons, right, can work in certain places. In the circularity space, reuse, right? There's big questions about rewards or penalties and how these things work. A lot of it has to do with like the dollar value of the product. And so again, it's very nuanced, right? Like for a $400 jacket, the reuse world on that versus a 1 cent plastic bag, you're going to need different levers to pull on. And so again, there's a lot of, you know, research out there, but I think ultimately to get the mass to tip, it's a systems level problem. You generally need, you know, you need everything to line up, and that's often like a government hand as well. The major thing for me in circular economy is it's this negative externality, like from an economic standpoint. You don't pay to throw something away, but there's a cost to society for that. And so the real question becomes like, how do you fix the economics of it? I actually, you know, the economics I think works well. We just don't account for it properly. So yeah, I don't. It's a complicated question for sure. I think it's very nuanced into which industry you're speaking to.
Makes sense. And do you have any advice for someone here? One of the questions is looking for an entry-level position as a sustainable consultant.
Yeah, I mean, I think fine, right? So sustainability, climate, these are huge terms. They almost mean nothing now, right? Like ESG means nothing. It's like everything.
Right.
And so, like, what's your niche? What are you really into? Is it food waste and compost? Is it textiles? Is it circular packaging? Right? Like my expertise is circular packaging. I have a curiosity around food waste. I don't know if I'd call myself an expert there. And I know very little about textiles, for example, or, you know, materials, right? I don't know that much about seaweed and mushrooms. And there's a whole world going on there. So I think first I would, you know, hone it in a bit and then become an expert in that. Just like read everything and go meet with all the people and all the companies that are doing that and just learn about it. I personally have, you know, other than you've kind of seen how I got my job at the Rounds was a LinkedIn message, but it really wasn't about a job. You know, most of your jobs are going to come from networks. And I think the most genuine version of that is from meeting with people out of real curiosity. And then if an opportunity lines up, it lines up. Or if they remember you, right, you keep it warm, and then they, you know, you reach out to them, see how they're doing, and then they happen, their friend in another company has, you know, some opportunity. So I think, yeah, just focus and network, I would say, would be the best way to do that.
Right, and that's one of the next questions. I know we have you, Abby. We're gonna come right to you, but wanted to quickly ask what your recommendations are then for like newsletter recommendations, how to stay current. I know, like, for sure, Tara is a fantastic way to stay current within the community, and making sure that you're current on the app to keep yourself up to date. But what other recommendations might you have, Evan?
Yeah, so again, like Tara's great. There's a couple other companies similar. Climate Base is great as well, similar to Tara. For me, my only social media, embarrassingly, is LinkedIn. And so I follow companies, I connect with people, and then my LinkedIn feed is just like the most up-to-date news about what's going on. And again, I'm lucky to be in New York. There's just a ton of events, and you go and you meet people, and it's a really, I don't know, it's I haven't had to seek it out that much. I think you just go and follow things on LinkedIn. I'm sure people more aware of, you know, better social media platforms might have better advice here, but for me, it's worked really well. Yeah, and I think you can learn everything you would need to know, like, through that type of thing. And then there's books, right? Like, there's certainly lots of books when you get into the details, but I'm more of a news and meeting with people type of person.
And it's worked for you very well. It is. I know the more interaction, even these meetings, everyone should connect with each other, right? Here, and see how we can all help each other. And next, Abby Shapiro, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me? Okay. Great talk. Thank you. This was so empowering. Really interesting stuff. I really related to your hesitation about Walmart. I'm getting into climate tech, and I'm wondering about if I'm limiting my options by closing myself off to places like Walmart or other places that are like, you know, don't penetrate my green glasses. I'm wondering, and I think that's really limiting my potential impact. So I was wondering if there are other companies that are maybe invisible to maybe people in this community that are good options or good places to do good in the climate space.
Yeah, thanks, Avi. So I would say two things. One is, you know, a lot of companies, even the Walmarts and Amazons, like, are doing these things. And so even if they're doing things that you don't agree with, like, you can still be a part of the solution within those companies. And then even at smaller companies, I'll be, honest, when I first joined the rounds, the first time I went to the warehouse, I was a little bit like disappointed. It didn't seem as kind of buttoned up as I thought. And I had a freeze moment, and I said, actually, this is a great opportunity. Like, I can be the person. It's a smaller company, it's easier to do, but I can be the person that turns this around, that makes this the factory that I would want it to be. And so then you can look at it in two ways, right? Again, it's problem and opportunity. You can either see the existence of a company. Obviously, it's going to be hard for you to like turn the Walmart ship compared to a small company, but you're not the only one, right? There's people like, I have friends who've worked at these big companies who have, for climate or other kind of mission-driven initiatives, have created groups and teams within the company and helped move things, right? Like I'm talking like paternity leave at Google. Like I have a friend who literally like used data to show that people weren't taking paternity leave at Google and like forced it through. And that was his thing, right? And so I'm just saying, you can also join a company and then start a like, green tech club within Walmart, regardless of where you are in the org, and help push that through. So I do think that you are limiting yourself if you don't kind of open up a little bit more about how impactful you can be, right? Like it's your story, and you can help drive those changes. And I think that like that's what we need. And companies often want that. I mean, I remember even at the rounds, we had an engineer decline an offer because we weren't green enough. And like I respected it, but I also thought it was a little bit short-sighted. It's like, hey, like we want to be green. Come join us. Like help us get there. Obviously, the business numbers needs like we need to pay everybody's salary and like stay afloat. But we have the same mission. So I do think there's more opportunity. And I think if you have the chance and ask those questions to the right people during your interview process, you'll get a sense of like really where they stand, if there's any room for that or not. So I wouldn't close the door from the beginning, to be honest.
Wonderful. We're getting close to the end, but I wonder if you can just let us know, you mentioned New York and what you know that New York is doing and how else we can go back to our cities and what we can do to help sustainability and where we live.
Yeah, so again, I would
thanks, Carol.
I would find the organizations that are doing things. Again, like you probably don't have to start anything from the beginning, right? Until you're more advanced in it. But I met a great guy in New York called Tom Keefe. He's an angel investor in climate, and met him through a dinner through someone I knew from sustainable packaging, right? So just like being out there and getting into it. And then I got really involved in this local Law 97. I've been going to these education seminars on there's a energy exchange, and so just learning kind of about the nitty gritty. But just being curious and networking. But every city has something happening, and I don't know, I can't speak to like a global sense of where to find that information. But for me, again, like LinkedIn has worked really well, even for those types of things, right? Like those cities and government agencies will also have a presence on LinkedIn, and I'm sure other social media as well.
Great. That's awesome. It is 1 o'clock now, and we do want to thank you so much, Evan, for your time. And I mean, it was definitely a learning experience and such positivity. We've, been exposed and hear so much negative when it comes to climate. So it's so good to hear all the positive and all the enthusiasm. So thank you so much. I'm going to stay on for a little bit if anyone has any additional questions, but thank you all so much for coming. We usually have a survey, which for some reason isn't linked here. So if you wanted to go back to Tara and just let them know how great a session this was, and so many participants, we had over 103 participants. So it's wonderful to see everyone make the time to come and listen today and be a part of this wonderful community. And make sure you go home and every action counts, every single action. So make sure you try and do something today. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. That was wonderful. Great slides. A few people have asked for your slides. Is that something you're willing to share?
Yeah, I can put something together for sure.
Okay, that'd be great. We'll link it with the recording if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, good. And your LinkedIn, can we share that as well?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, perfect. You're going to get a few people interested in being a part of your feed.
It's not super exciting, but
the place to go, it seems.
Yeah, sure.
That's great. Well, I look forward to connecting with you again. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. I'm
Great, thank
inspired.
you.
I'll let you know how the water tour went. Water facility tour.
Enjoy.
Okay. Thank
Great.
you. Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Karina, Apu? Do you guys have any other questions, or you just wanted to listen to every little nugget he had to share?
No, sorry, I normally forget to close the window.
Oh, that's
Sorry.
great. Well, great. Have a good day.
Thank you.
You have a
Have a
good
good
day.
evening.
Thank you so much for coming. Please feel free. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Bye-bye now.